In society, I believe, there are two kinds of people. Now, this is not scientific. What I'm telling you is not scientific. But this is my general and experiential assumptions. You know, this assumptions comes out of, 10, 11 churches I've served. And so this is not supposed to be a scientific, analysis. But on the other hand, with a disclaimer, I would say there are probably, more categories or subcategories to this. But number one, since I wrote it, I have to tell you. First type of person will say, I look around me and I see a most brilliant artist who gave everything with exceptional details. Only God, a superhuman being, can do so masterfully. I know I am not an accident. God's hand is with me. This kind of people is very mindful that God exists and God is very wise. They tend to be religious, not necessarily Christian, and observe certain rituals in life before making decisions. Such devotees may say, I prayerfully seek to discern God's best for me. That's one type of person, right? And the second type of person will say, I see God as a big brother constantly watching my moves. I am the master of my destiny. I don't need anyone telling me what to do. I need no God as a crutch. I do my way. I do the way I do, period. Such persons are self-determinists. Such persons is very focused and ambitious. Such person will fight their way and choose not to accommodate others' opinion unless they themselves articulate it. It is always my way. So we might find ourselves in one of them or both, right? Because we have learned to adapt and do our best. And in the tension, try to balance the best way we can. Right? So there are those kinds of things out there. I think a lot of us would like to do things that will not just benefit us individually, but how can what I do also benefits others? Right? I think majority of people are in that camp. So why am I telling you this? I am telling you this as an introduction to the text, because in the Old Testament, there were people such as that, not just one, not just two, but so many of them. They were like us. Strong-headed, right? And others were pretty mild and saying, whatever the Lord's desire, I will do. You will find those characters in the Bible. So here is a story that will lead us to chapter 8. In brief, God was very instrumental at delivering children of Israel from the oppressive hands of Pharaoh in Egypt. They cried out unto God for their liberation. And God became a central figure in their story of deliverance. God was with them all through their wilderness journey. And when they finally arrived at the promised land filled with milk and honey, right? You remember that story? Milk and honey. And once they were beginning to settle down and become a nation, a people of the covenant, God did not just put them away and told them, do what you want. Right? I brought you out. Now you're here. Run this place as you want. No. God appointed judges. Right? Read the book of Judges when you go home. God appointed, anointed judges over the children of Israel to guide them. So Eli, the chief priest, was one of them. And Eli was a very revered priest. But Eli had sons. That was no good. They somehow distorted the legacy of their father and dishonored God. And somewhere in the middle of this, there is a woman who comes to temple to pray for a son. And her name was Hannah, right? Hannah. Eli saw her come to the temple, and she would just mumble and not really hear what she's talking about, what she's really saying. She would just very deeply groan from within her inner being and offer the groaning unto God. And somehow Eli thought, that woman must be drunk. And he came and asked, how long have you been drunk? That's in the book. And Hannah said to Eli, I am not drunk. I am just praying to God. I am just praying to God. She was really bringing from deep within her pain. Because in the olden days, if you're married and have no children, you are a barren. You had no place in society. Right? And so she's saying, I am nothing, I am nobody. I am nobody. I'm not drunk, I'm just a very sad woman, and I'm just pouring my heart to the Lord. That's what Hannah said. Later, Hannah and Elkanah, her husband, was blessed with a son. And she named him Samuel. Meaning, I asked the Lord for him. And later, you know how God called him and he went to Eli 3 different times, right? So that you have to go home and read. But he became a judge for the children of Israel and working with Eli. And so comes to chapter 8. Chapter 8 for today. Samuel got old, like all of us. He was old by now. And his eyesight wasn't great. Maybe his hearing was not that great. But he wants to leave a legacy. Right? He wants to leave a legacy behind him. And so what happens? He appoints his 2 sons to be judges in Beersheba. And they turned out not to be a great judges. They swindled. They really hurt the legacy of their father, Samuel. And so the elders of the community came to Samuel. Hey, we need to talk. You're getting old and your sons are terrible. They are just atrocious. They are a shame to us. They're no good. We want king. We want a king. We want a king just like all the other nations around us. They're powerful. They're organized. They have a good ruler. We want a king. Well, Samuel was not happy. They could have said, I know you're old, but you can be our king. No, they didn't say that. They just said, you're old. Just go. And your sons, no good. Go. Give us a king. Find us a ruler who will guide us. Well, Samuel was one unhappy person. He went to God. Hey God, this is what people are saying. What do I do? Maybe Samuel was expecting some wisdom from God. But God basically said, give them what they want. All of them. Really? Give them everything what they're asking? Yeah, they want their way. They want their way. Give them what they want. But tell them, explain to them the consequences of what they're asking. Allow them to see and understand what they are really asking. And so the text, this king will take away your sons, draft them to be in the military. Your daughters will become seamsters and bakers, and you have animals. The king will demand the best out of you, and a tenth of whatever your harvest is, the king will want some of that. And someday you will cry unto me again, just like you did in Egypt. Right? Just like you did in Egypt. But this time around, you cry, I'm not going to show up. I am not going to come. You want to do your own way? Go, do it. Have a wonderful time. But when you fall on a ditch somewhere, don't call me. I am not your 911. I am not going to send you a rescue mission. You will be on your own. How about that? Yeah, that's pretty tragic. But I think some of us travels that road. We want to do our own stuff. We don't want anybody telling us. Trusting God, God's wisdom, those are passé. Those are gone. God gave us brilliant mind, and we can do whatever we want. God gave us brains so that we can function on our own. We don't need somebody telling us what to do. That's what some people say. I work hard as you are. Look where I've been and where I'm now. You're poor. You're struggling. I'm sorry. Maybe you don't work as hard as I am. Right? You go your way and you face the consequences. I was wondering, what was God comparing them with? And so I had to go back and dig deeper the conversation that God had with children of Israel. And I found a couple of things. God's way. If they obeyed, followed God's instructions, they will be blessed. And so a couple of verses here in chapter 1, verse 17. Prophet Isaiah spoke against Judah and Jerusalem for their waywardness. Chapter 1, verse 17 says, learn to do good. Seek justice. Help the oppressed. Defend the cause of orphans. Fight for the rights of widows. God says that. Wow. And then in 21 and 23, 2:23, he says, see, See how Jerusalem, once so faithful, has become a prostitute. Once home of justice and righteousness, she is now filled with murderers. Once like pure silver, you have become like a worthless slag. Once so pure, you are now like watered down wine. Your leaders are rebels, the companions of thieves. All of them love bribes and demands payoffs. But they refuse to defend the cause of orphans or fight for the rights of widows. What did God say to the children of Israel? In Exodus, God instructed the children of Israel how to develop leadership and responsibility. Chapter 8, verse 21. But elect, he says, God says, but elect from all the people some capable, honest men. Let's put their women too. Honest men and women who fear and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 100, 50, and 10. Give them some responsibility, what they can exercise. Chapter 23, verses 6 to 9. In a lawsuit, God said, you must not deny justice to the poor. Be sure never to charge anyone falsely with evil. Never sentence an innocent or blameless person to death. For I never declare guilty person to be innocent. Take no bribes. That comes again and again. For a bribe makes you to ignore something that you see clearly. A bribe makes even a righteous person twist the truth, God said. You must not oppress foreigners. You know what it's like to be foreigners. For you yourselves were once foreigners in the land of Egypt. These are the instructions, exhortation God gave to children of Israel how to live harmoniously. But somehow they develop this mind of their own. I will do my way. But as you can see, God's way is better. It's a struggle that I face every day. How do I do God's way? How do I discern God's best for me and for the people I serve, right? It's not always 100%. But it's a struggle that we all go through. Sometimes we have our own mind dictating what to do. And some days it's the heart that tells you, listen to the Spirit of God. It's one of those things that we wrestle with. Some day this one win, other day this one win. Nonetheless, we are still committed to God and God's service. That is what church is about. Church is not about gathering of all the righteous people who know exactly where to go and have everything put together. If that's the case, we don't need a church. But we are broken people, have shortcomings, we fail. But God still says, come, all of you who labor and carry a heavy laden, I will give you rest. And learn from me. Not me, God. See? Learn from God how to walk. And so, sisters and brothers, I encourage you today not to give up when you fail. Not to give up when you lose. Not to fail when you find yourself in the dump. God has not given up on you. Right? God hasn't. And so don't give up yourself. Trust God that God will still journey with you even through the valley of the shadow of death. God will always be there for you and me. And so, go with a sense of hope. Live your life. Bring praise unto God and be a joyful sojourners in this world. Amen? Amen. That's it for today. And may God bless us.